I'm joined now by the anchor at Fox LA, Alex Michelson. Alex, thanks for joining me.
Great to see you, Brian.
So when it comes to California politics, you're the guy. You are the main California politics reporter out here. And right now, California is very much in the news as this redistricting fight really starts to heat up. So first and foremost, and I spoke with this about Gavin Newsom when I interviewed him a couple of weeks back, but do you think that this is actually going to happen? Do you think that Newsom is fully committed to moving forward with this?
I think Newsom's fully committed. This week, I spoke to the chair of the DNC, Ken Martin, nationwide, and that they are fully committed to California doing this. I mean, as long as Texas moves forward, they've said that if Texas doesn't, they're not going to do it. But if Texas moves forward, and all indications are that Texas is, California is going for this for a variety of reasons. It's completely in Gavin Newsom's best interest to do this. He realizes, I think, that his way to be a serious contender for the Democratic presidential nomination is to be seen as the strongest fighter. If you go back to Mortal Kombat when we were kids, it's like choose your fighter, right? And he's trying to be seen as somebody who's the fighter that you would choose. And so this is a real way that he can use California's supermajority in both the Assembly and the Senate to produce actual results for the Democratic Party and give the Democrats a real shot at winning the House. If Texas moves forward and California doesn't do this, Democrats are essentially shut out, most likely, of any chance to win the House. You look at the map for the Senate, they're probably not going to win the Senate. And obviously, we know for the next 2 years, they're not going to have control of the White House. So this is kind of the one shot. Newsom is all in on it. The DNC is going to be all in and giving him money to do it. I think you're going to see a lot of Democratic donors rally to this cause. But it's not a 100% slam dunk for sure thing that California voters are going to say yes to it. They have a special election that would probably happen on November 4th, near when we're going to have these, elections in New Jersey and Virginia. But now there's going to be a California election on an off year. And there's going to be tremendous pressure for California voters to basically make the decision to take less power for themselves, less power for independent redistricting, and try to make the system more partisan.
Yeah, I mean, but look, I mean, the reality is that what we are doing right now is just unilateral. I mean, I can make the case to you. I think you understand the case that I would make, which is that.
And you've been, and let's give you credit. You've been ahead of this issue for years and way ahead of other people. You've seen this fight coming for a long time. You've been trying to encourage people to be part of this fight for a long time when a lot of people, frankly, dismissed you. And now that it's happening, all of a sudden, everybody wants to get behind this concept, which is something that you've been talking about for a while.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And look, I think that there is no virtue in unilaterally disarming. And that's what we've done for so long. And we've watched Republicans gerrymander the everlasting hell out of Ohio and North Carolina and Wisconsin and Florida and Texas one time already, and Utah and just states across the country, while Democrats engage in good governance in hopes of ushering in some reciprocation that never arrives. And so at this point, we can continue to unilaterally disarm and hope that Republicans are going to see that goodwill and respond. And when they don't, we're going to recognize that we're just permanently pushing ourselves out of government. And I don't think that that's what anybody wants, and certainly isn't ushering in an era of good governance to watch Republicans run roughshod over the country. I
mean, you end up with a system where, a lot of people were taught as kids, two wrongs don't make a right. So if you really believe in this concept that there should be independent redistricting, that it shouldn't be driven by partisan politics, that then for you to make the choice to get rid of that system is hard for some people to get there. That being said, if you are a partisan, which in California, a majority of people are Democrats, 25% more Democrats than Republicans, and you see what Trump is doing and you're fearful about everything else, then you say, all right, this is what we got to do for now. The problem is, in the Cold War, they talked about mutually assured destruction. What we're doing, both parties are doing here, is destroying democracy. Now, I know you would say Republicans bear more responsibility for that. And in fact, they are the ones taking the charge on this. So let's be clear about that. But what's happening with this Democratic response is we are making the system less democratic, less fair, and we're making our politicians less responsive to the needs of the actual people. And so we're going to have a system that only increases partisanship and decreases actual connection to real voters.
And so my pushback to that would be, look, it is one party, the Democrats, that are pushing for a ban on partisan gerrymandering. And they've tried to push that through with H.R. 1. Not a single Republican voted for it. And so, look, I understand that it's easy to look at this in a vacuum right now, as if we were all just born today, and to see, oh, look, this is a race to the bottom. But the end of the line for Democrats is that we have a ban on partisan gerrymandering nationwide. The end of the line for Republicans in their ideal world is just all of the Republican states are gerrymandered to within an inch of their lives. So there is a different goal at the end of this for both parties. The Democrats don't want to engage in a process where we just gerrymander all of our states and that's just how it goes. Our goal at the end of this is to actually ban partisan gerrymandering and to have fair maps across the country. We tried one avenue where we have these independent redistricting commissions in our major Democratic strongholds like California and New York. It was never reciprocated by Republicans. And so now if we're going to try to have good governance at the end of this, then you need to get in power to be able to do anything. And the only way to get in power while Republicans are gerrymandering is to fight back, fight fire with fire, get in the majority, and then pass some of these reforms that we actually want to see.
Well, I mean, there was actually a push to do independent redistricting in California, like 2008, 2010, that period. There weren't a lot of Democrats that were behind it. Gavin Newsom was one of them who was, but most were not because it would be bad for the party. And when Democrats had a chance to have full control of government a few times in the last 25, 30 years, they did not pass independent gerrymandering around the country. So most parties operate for whatever's in their particular best interest. But it is obvious and objective that Republican Party and many people in the Republican Party do not believe in the government system itself. Right. Think the whole thing is flawed. So they do not have the reverence for the institutions that Democrats have and have no problem tearing it down because they don't believe in it in the first place.
I mean, look,
there is a difference there.
I would push back and say this is well beyond reverence for institutions. This is not us defending the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Like this is a basic respect for the core tenets of democracy. This is just allowing fair representation in the House. This is deigning to allow Democrats to have a majority when they get more votes. I mean, we've seen the ways in which they've gerrymandered their states, that they're continuing to do this mid-cycle redistricting. This is not just a lack of reverence for institutions. This is Republicans completely abandoning democracy and our democratic institutions as we know it.
And President Trump has not demonstrated a whole lot of love for objective truths. I mean, look at what he did this week with the consumer, the numbers from the Labor Department.
Bureau of Labor Statistics.
You don't like the numbers, so get rid of the person who delivered you the numbers. Pretend like the numbers don't exist. You look in the first term, when COVID testing showed a lot of positive tests, he said, let's stop testing because if we aren't testing, we don't have positives. Right. I mean, you think about the way that he has created his own reality. By just denying things. I mean, think about Georgia in 2020. Find me the votes. I mean, he's essentially doing the same thing now in Texas by saying, find me the votes. It's President Trump, using his will to create a new reality and honestly, give the guy credit. I mean, he's very good at doing it. And he's been able to get his way time and time again in a lot of these instances. Obviously, not all of them. Wasn't able to do it in 2020. But he is, thing by thing, imposing his will on the entire world. And if you're a Republican voter, a base voter who voted for Trump, in a lot of instances, it's promises made, promises kept in terms of his agenda.
You look at the way in which Trump, to your exact point, is manifesting into reality whatever existence he is looking for, right? And I think in large part, that's exactly why Democrats have to push back. That because he has been so successful in barreling through and getting whatever he wants. And then you have Democrats who are historically much more cautious, much more careful than the Republicans anyway. And so to contrast the two parties where you have Trump who will barrel ahead, get whatever he wants, not be deterred by the law or certainly democratic norms or institutions, small d democratic norms and institutions, or even the U.S. Constitution or judges. And then meanwhile, we've got Democrats trying to practice good government in hope that Republicans are going to reciprocate. They don't. And so just the asymmetry between the two sides, where Trump is not impeded by anything, and yet you look at the other side where Democrats are often impeded by everything. And that's the asymmetry that I think so many Democratic voters are so sick and tired of, which is why this fight is such a welcome fight that we're seeing right now, because it's the first time that Democrats are actually willing to fight fire with fire, if it, of course, does go forward, with which I guess leads to this next question, which is, now that Newsom has engaged in this fight, do you think that there's some risk here? Because if he fails, then that does feel like more of the same. And so now that you've kind of jumped in the water, you have to make sure that you can swim to the other side.
Yeah, he's going to be all in on this and give everything that he has. It reminds me sort of the recall, which we had in 2021, where he had to fight that thing all in. And I think we're going to be seeing a whole lot of Gavin Newsom. You know, he's clearly made a calculation, which, by the way, I think is the same calculation he made in 2022. If you remember back then, after Roe v. Wade was overturned, Gavin Newsom came on with me and with other people with this line, "Where the hell is the Democratic Party? Where's my party?" Basically slamming the Democratic Party for a weak and ineffective response, and making the calculation that the party needs a social media fighter who's willing to punch President Trump in the face.
Yeah.
And he was going forward, I think, with the assumption that Joe Biden was not going to run for re-election. And that was going to be the basis of his presidential campaign. Obviously, Democrats won just enough votes in the House for Biden to stay. We all know what happens there. Newsom has to do a body hug of Biden because he thought that would be better for him. Also, having Kamala Harris be president would not be great for him. And now he's in this place where he kind of was in 2022 when he made that original theory, which is saying that Democrats desperately want somebody to punch back, somebody to be tough. He had a brief moment with Charlie Kirk and some others on his podcast where he tried this idea of centrism. He realized that didn't work. That lasted for like a week and a half for him.
Yeah.
And now he's back to this theory. I mean, Gavin Newsom is somebody who obsessively looks at what's working on social media. He looks at TV ratings. He watches Fox News. He's like very plugged in to sort of where the electorate is and what people are doing in similar ways that Trump is, frankly. But that gives him a sense, I think, an instinctive sense of what people are yearning for. And especially if you do that a lot in the social media space, it probably makes you even more wanting to do that fighter thing, which is different, I think, than a lot of his Democratic colleagues who frankly don't, I think, spend a lot of time in those spaces.
Yeah.
So they have a different instinctive feel.
You speak to a lot of Republicans on your show. You're one of the few people who is able to really engage in conversations with folks from both sides. Would love to have some Republicans.
Not your MO.
Well, look, I would love to have Republicans come on. They don't respond to my emails. I'm still waiting for that Marjorie. I've legitimately emailed the offices of like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert. Nobody responds. Surprise, surprise.
Lauren Boebert's busy doing other things.
Yeah,
okay, keep
yeah,
going.
that's right. Heading into watching
Beetlejuice. Okay,
right.
keep going.
Patronizing the local musical.
Yeah.
With that said, when you speak about Gavin Newsom to some of these Republican folks, how effective of a villain does he serve for them?
Oh my God.
And the reason I ask that is because for so long, Republicans have relied on these villains to really fuel their own prospects. And we saw that with Hillary Clinton for the better part of a decade. It's often been George Soros. Nancy Pelosi was it as well. So, California Democrats do have a long history of occupying this role. Adam Schiff. But when you talk about Gavin Newsom, he has made overtures to the right. But that notwithstanding, how does he fit into this mold of the new villain of this new era for these Republicans?
To use a Gavin Newsom phrase, he's next level, period, full stop.
Yeah.
He's, no, I mean, you see, I look at the social media numbers too. He drives a level of anger and hatred and disgust and vitriol on the right that very few people do. And it's part of the reason that he gets such great social media engagement numbers when you talk to him or when he puts stuff out, because a lot of that's driven by people who like him, and there's a lot of people who hate him. And especially in California, there's a lot of people that have not forgotten about COVID. And that see him as somebody who was one of the first to lock down the state, that he kept public schools closed longer than most. They obviously remember the French Laundry incident when he was dining out when other people were told not to, even though it was technically legal. It was a bad look and all the rest of it. And so he provokes an anger that you don't see for very many people. And you know, I think he would hope, and Democrats would hope, that he creates a positive response in people on the left, and we don't know that yet. We're going to see, because we still have a ways to go, obviously. We were talking about this a bit before we got on. The kinds of candidates that have traditionally won the Democratic presidential nomination and then gone on to win the presidency are more centrist, conciliatory candidates.
Yeah.
You know, Bill Clinton, the governor of Arkansas, who was like talking about, you know, welfare reform, and you know, Barack Obama, who ran as there's no, you know, blue states and red states, it's the United States. Joe Biden, running as sort of, you know, your nice grandpa,
but I mean, but
not
it's
too extreme.
It's also
so
clear
the time has changed.
It's clear
right?
that the
And
time has
media's
changed. Right, exactly.
And so the question is, are we in a different era, and do Democrats want a different kind of leader? And can that work? We do not have an example so far of a Democrat in that mold winning the presidency, but we had never had an example of a Republican in that mold winning the presidency until Donald Trump did it.
Right. And also, I think that this is the first time that the moment would call for something like that. When Biden was coming into office, I think people were exhausted at what they viewed as a fluke, a one-off. It was like, okay, we had Trump, we want to get rid of Trump, we want to go back to normal. But I don't think that there is a world that's normal in the aftermath of Trump. I think that the Republican Party has fallen into the mold of what Trump is right now, and there is no coming back from this for these Republicans. I mean, they vote in lockstep with Trump. They are wholly owned subsidiaries of Trump. There is no more shame in today's Republican Party. Trump says jump, they say how high. This is why we're seeing these Texas maps get gerrymandered mid-cycle. There is a complete abandonment of democracy across the country in deference to a consolidation of power by this MAGA GOP. And so, I mean, look, I can speak for myself.
I know you're not going to want. He takes care of his base, though. I mean, if you think about it,
who are we talking about?
Trump takes care of his base. Think about it. First off, he's great at branding. And if you ask the average Republican, what does the Republican Party stand for? They would say, we make America great again. We're tough on immigration. We lower taxes, and we're tough on trans rights, right? Like that's what they do. And you know what? He's done all those things, right? He's gotten tough on the border, right? He's done the culture war stuff. He's like leaned into that fight.
Yeah. The only one I would push back on
taxes for rich people, right? I mean,
lower taxes for rich people, raise taxes in the form of a consumption tax with the tariffs. But right. Yes, for the wealthy.
But yes. I'm saying if you're in that camp, right? You understand what he's going for. He says the same simple thing over and over again. And to his credit, he's tried to deliver for you and has put some points on the board. The challenge for the Democratic Party right now is, what is the Democratic brand? What is the one sentence that defines what is the Democratic Party for? What are the two or three policy objectives other than we don't like Donald Trump? To bring the party to relevance, to make it seem more interesting to people who have not maybe loving Trump, but are disgusted with the system and have just said, F it, I'm out, and aren't voting. Is there a way to get to those people? And I don't think we've seen that yet.
Do you think that there is an opening by virtue of the fact that, look, you name some things that Trump has delivered on. There's also the fact that the guy has run populist platforms and he doesn't deliver populist platforms, certainly not economic populist platforms. Right. He ran mostly on running to lower the cost of groceries that that brand new shiny word, groceries that nobody's ever heard of before, lower the cost of eggs, lower the cost of rent, lower the cost of housing.
Oh, yeah.
He's raised all the prices of those things by virtue of his trade war. I mean, and this is what he does. He's presented populist platforms before. In his first term, he ran on an infrastructure law, a jobs boom, a manufacturing renaissance, a healthcare plan that was cheaper and more comprehensive. None of those things happened. He gave himself a tax cut. And this second term promised, again, lower prices on everything, promised to end the Ukraine-Russia war on day one, promised to bring inflation down. Inflation's going up right now. Promised to release the Epstein files. Won't do that. Promised free IVF for everybody. Just announced today that that's not going to happen. And so we've seen plenty of these populist platform planks that he has refused to deliver on. And I think people are recognizing that as well. And look, yeah, if you want to attack trans people, he's your guy. If you want somebody who's going to be a culture war warrior, he's your guy. But I wonder if you think that there's an opening by virtue of the fact that a lot of the things that he promised has refused to deliver on. And I'll say this one last thing. He's refusing to deliver on these things while simultaneously heaping these opulent benefits onto himself, which doesn't exactly help him in the optics front. When you are giving yourself a $200 million ballroom, when you are gifting yourself a $1 billion retrofitted Qatari jet that you get to keep after the presidency, at the same time that you're refusing to lower costs and cutting healthcare for 17 million Americans and food assistance to the tune of $300 billion, all of those together tell a very clear story about the kinds of people you're looking to help and the kinds of people that you're perfectly content to fuck over despite what you promised them during the campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any way that you could talk to a Republican if they're giving you straight that if Barack Obama did a $1 billion Qatari jet for himself, they would be okay with that. But look, yes, his Achilles heel is the economy. Which is why he literally fired the person who gave the jobs numbers because he realizes that his biggest weakness is that he knows that lowering. It's why you see on this tariffs thing, the taco. Trump always chickens out. If it gets to be too bad, he just changes the numbers. Because he's recognizing that is, of course, his potential weakest position, and that is something that Democrats have as the potential way forward, right? This idea of there are no matter, even though in our media universe we pretend like there aren't objective truths, there are some objective truths. If you go to the grocery store, that number is a number, like it's either higher or it's lower. You go to the gas station, that number is either higher or lower. I mean, people can feel, they go to the doctor and all of a sudden some of what they had before isn't paid for by insurance and now they're having to pay it out of cost. All these things, real people that don't watch shows like this, that are living day to day, that are struggling to get by because shit's just too fucking expensive, they all of a sudden now feel this in a different way and they say, what the fuck, right? Like that's a real thing. And so, yes, that is a huge potential problem for him. And to your point about the elites, the reason why the Jeffrey Epstein story is so big for the MAGA base is because Jeffrey Epstein is a story about protecting elites. That's what it is. It's this idea of the deep state, this pedophile cabal. That's the cornerstone of what QAnon's all about. That's what QAnon started with. This premise that there's this ring of powerful people that are molesting and abusing children, and they all protect each other in order to hurt these kids. And so when you say we're going to uncover that, we're going to expose that, we're going to root that out, and then you don't do any of that, what does that make you seem like to these base people? It makes it seem like you're a part of it. So that's why that issue hits so much. Epstein is connected to the idea of the economy and costs going up because both are the same thing, which is like, we can afford it. It's not hurting us. So fuck you. Right. And that is the weakness. Now, the Democrats need to be able to do it in a way where people buy into what they're saying and they don't look weak and they don't look pandering. And some of it is hard because some of these Democrats who never talked about Jeffrey Epstein when Joe Biden was in charge for 4 years, all of a sudden seem obsessed with the idea because Trump is there and they seem kind of craven and opportunistic. There needs to be an authentic messaging happening on issues that people genuinely care about.
Yeah. Well, look, on the Epstein thing, I'm one of those people who was not moved by the Epstein story while Joe Biden was in office, and certainly wasn't moved by it when Trump came into office. But I think, like a lot of people in this country, including, non-political folks as well, when you see Donald Trump fall over himself to prevent you from looking at the thing that he told everybody to look at, and suddenly starts calling for the arrest of Barack Obama so that we don't look at it, suddenly calls for the arrest of Kamala Harris so that we don't look at it, and then Oprah and Al Sharpton and Beyonce, and then maybe we should change the name of the Washington Commanders to the Washington Redskins. And look, there's cane sugar and Coca-Cola now, and anything under the sun that he can think. Let's denaturalize Rosie O'Donnell. And then we start to get the drip, drip, drip of what he's actually done, and the fact that he's in the files and was alerted by the DOJ. All of that makes it pretty obvious that he is trying to cover up something. And so I don't think you lose points for not being interested in the Epstein story, only to then want to focus on a story that is so evidently salacious and such a blatant cover up in terms of what he's doing. I think that anybody, regardless of your interest beforehand, would recognize that it's well placed to start focusing your attention on this now.
Well, and the most potentially outrageous outcome of this entire Epstein thing, when the Republican base largely for years have been pushing for accountability when it comes to Ghislaine Maxwell, there is a not 0% chance that this ends with Ghislaine Maxwell being let out, potentially being pardoned, who orchestrated the whole fucking thing.
Went from release.
At the end of the day, nobody is held accountable. And the one person who actually has been held accountable could use her dirt on President Trump, potentially. We don't know if she has it. This is just supposition, but could use that as a leverage tool to get herself out of prison. And then there's literally nobody held accountable at all.
Right.
So everybody that's been pushing for this, it could end up with literally the opposite.
Yeah, go from release the Epstein files to release Epstein's accomplice. That's a hell of a jump. Okay, let's pivot over to the last topic here, and that is the California gubernatorial race. First and foremost, what was your take on the fact that Kamala Harris announced that she wasn't running for governor, and do you think that she's setting the stage for her to be able to engage in a presidential run in 2028?
She's leaving the door open to a presidential run in 2028. I think she genuinely hasn't made that decision yet.
It didn't seem like a particularly compelling argument when she was on Colbert and talking about it. Didn't sound like someone who was primed for a 28 run.
No, I mean, look, I think she's exhausted. I think she's been through a lot. Having talked to people that are close to her, she just kind of came to the decision that she didn't really want to be governor. She hasn't really been interested or active in a lot of these California issues in a very long time. She was never an executive in this state in the traditional sense. She was never a mayor. She was never a supervisor. She was never, obviously, a governor, lieutenant governor. She was an attorney general. She was a senator. She was dealing with issues that aren't like homelessness and housing affordability, a lot of the things that are sort of at the core of what California is struggling with right now. I think it would have, frankly, lessened her to run for governor. Right now, whatever room she walks into, she's Madam Vice President. She'll always be Madam Vice President. She's the first female vice president. She was the Democratic nominee. With respect to myself, like, if she would have run for governor, instead of doing that first interview on Colbert, she would have probably done it with me, right? And just wouldn't have felt as cool as being in the Ed Sullivan Theater with like all those people and $100 million budget. Like, it's, she's actually, I think, makes herself bigger by not running for governor and sort of getting in the mud of going up and down the Central Valley talking about water issues.
Just as a quick aside, when you become governor after being vice president, do you retain the Madam Vice President moniker, or does the lower, I mean, objectively, a governor is not as impressive as a vice president. Does that forever take the place of that vice presidential moniker?
I think it's kind of whatever you choose.
Right.
Somebody like Colin Powell, when he was Secretary of State, not a bad title, preferred to be called General, because he thought that was a more impressive title.
Right.
And that's pretty 4-star general and chairman of Joint Chiefs, pretty impressive title too. I mean, the
Yeah.
guy's done a lot. But yeah, that's an interesting question.
Oh,
And we haven't had that. And when Richard Nixon was vice president and ran for governor of California, he lost. So we didn't get to have that,
yeah.
that
I guess
situation.
it's whatever you make it, which I guess
Yeah,
raises the question now, who are you looking at in terms of the top contenders for the governor of California?
I think the race is wide open. You got to think about, so like all this stuff with redistricting reminds you that it's like about the rules, right? And so you got to play to the rules.
Yeah.
So in California, for people that may not know, we have a top 2 primary system, which is open to everybody. Everybody can run. There is no Democratic primary. So you could have a situation where you have 2 Democrats running. You could have a Democrat and Republican. You could have any sort of split. So the most likely outcome, based off of the numbers, is that one Democrat and one Republican end up in the top 2. A Republican gets 25-30% in the first round. Then the Democrat wins in a landslide in the general election. The interesting thing is, could there be a situation where you end up with 2 Democrats that make the top 2? They're able to box out that Republican, and you end up with a real competitive race. There's a fight for the lane of the Democratic establishment, leftist person. That's like Katie Porter and Javier Becerra and Eleni Kounalakis and a bunch of people that most people probably don't know. There may be a fight for this sort of centrist Democrat lane. There's a guy named Stephen Klubeck, a billionaire businessman who I had on my show this week, who's an interesting character. Rick Caruso, I think, probably ends up getting into the race for governor at the end. That's my thing.
You don't think he's going to challenge Karen Bass for mayor of LA again?
I think that running for governor may be an easier path. I know he's doing polling right now. He'll probably make a decision in the next couple months, but if he gets in, and then you've got the Republican lane too. So there's no clear dominant front runner. But it's going to be challenging for a bunch of people to try to get attention in the most expensive media markets in the country and the most crowded field that we've had in a very long time.
Do you think Katie Porter is the immediate frontrunner given Kamala's refusal to run?
A very weak frontrunner. Yeah, I mean, she's got the most name ID. A lot of polls show that people know her the best. But as we saw when she ran for Senate statewide, she didn't win, and she came in a distant third. So, when voters had a chance to embrace her statewide, they didn't. So maybe this is the time, this is the right field for her, but it's gonna be tough. And I don't know, it's hard. This race doesn't happen until June of next year is when the primary happens. And as we've seen, a lot can happen in politics, before then. Just this year in California, we started the year off with the biggest wildfires we've ever had, most devastating.
Yeah.
And then we had the ice raids, both of which, completely changed our politics on the ground locally. And so we don't know what could happen between now and next June. Stories that we haven't even thought about that could change the dynamics of the race too.
Well, to that point, in those instances where California is in the news, I always find myself texting you to let me know if I'm in immediate danger. So like with those wildfires, I mean, I was literally texting you, can you please let me know if we have something called Runyon Canyon in the middle of Hollywood, and the fire was contained on Runyon Canyon, but Runyon butts up against Beverly Hills to the west, West Hollywood. East of that, Hollywood to the east of that. On the other side of the hill, it's Burbank and Studio City. And so all of the places that people know when they think of Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, Burbank, Studio City, like all of those places were at imminent risk with Runyon Canyon. That fire is in the middle of all of those things. It's a very famous hiking trail. And so I was texting Alex all night to let me know if I was going to have to, leave the city and try to vacate my house here. And then recently with the tsunami was the same thing. I was like, please let me know if a tsunami is going to engulf my home at some point. So ultimately,
that's what the job. I mean, that's kind of what the job of a local news anchor is in crisis. I mean, mean, local news is really, really important.
Yeah.
And your job is to kind of hold people's hands through a crisis,
Yeah.
sort of like a father figure. It's a weird
You're
a
the
weird place to be in. And to
you're the
the
natural disaster father of Los Angeles here.
yeah, and to the point on the fires, just not to get too in the weeds, but what we saw with that Runyon Canyon instance is how important it is to have firefighting helicopters. The reason the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire were so devastating was because we had 100-mile-an-hour winds and we weren't flying helicopters, so they weren't able to get the water on them in the same way.
Yeah.
A couple of days later, Runyon Canyon fire started, wasn't as bad a winds. They're able to get helicopters up, and within an hour, the whole thing was pretty much taken care of. So
Yeah.
that shows the
And I think
those guys, those firefighters in the helicopters do such amazing work.
they made Newsom made an announcement today about having the biggest fleet of firefighting helicopters, I think, in the world at this point. So
Yeah, including choppers that can fly 24/7, which is really important for those night operations.
yeah, I mean, I remember looking out my window and seeing those helicopters every 45 seconds or so, another dump at the hands of those helicopters. So yeah, pretty wild stuff that I hope I never see again. With that said, Alex, how can folks who are listening right now and watching see and hear more from you?
Yeah, they can check out youtube.com/Alex Michelson. That's Alex with an E. You can check out our work also, the Issue Is podcast, and see some of our past episodes, including episodes with Brian. And then social media, I'm at Alex Michelson, at Alex_Michelson on X, but at Alex Michelson on Insta and TikTok and all the rest. And would love to be able to engage with you. And if you could, subscribe to my YouTube page.
Awesome. I will put the link to your YouTube channel right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Alex, I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Brian.